I'm Kristen Contra. Welcome back to another best practices video for first grade. In these videos, we will share what one would expect to see and hear as they visit first grade mathematics classrooms. What do you notice or wonder about the following video? Do you notice the brightly colored three-dimensional blocks? Or maybe the new shapes the children are composing with 2 or 3 single blocks put together? These are two of the ideas first graders will be presented with as they begin their next unit on three-dimensional shapes. Just as in the video, students should get plenty of purposeful hands-on experience with concrete materials, both as blocks and as real-world objects. You never know, they will probably have a lot of fun too. This first grade unit of study, three-dimensional figures, encompasses the following key learning goals. Identifying, comparing, and sorting figures with defining attributes, such as number of edges, vertices, or faces. Sketching three-dimensional figures when given defining attributes. Composing and decomposing three-dimensional figures into a composite figure and creating a new figure from those. And finally, identifying parts of real-world objects that are modeled by three-dimensional figures. These goals can be found in the STEMscopes Scope 8 parent letter. So what should we see happening in the classroom in order for students to meet these goals? Here we see some clips from the Scope Explore activities. In the first activity, students explore and sort both concrete 3D figure manipulatives and 3D figure cutouts based upon their attributes. In the second video, we see students use concrete 3D figure manipulatives and real-world examples of 3D figures, such as a can of soup or a party hat, to match the real-world example to the manipulative. They then sketch a quick pic and determine the attributes of the figures. The third and fourth videos engage students in an activity in which they are composing and decomposing three-dimensional figures in order to compete in a sandcastle competition. Students utilize 3D manipulative figures in order to compose portions of a sandcastle and then decompose those portions, all while focusing on the individual figures that make them up. Each of these activities are great examples of the ways the CRA, Concrete Representational and Abstract Model, is implemented within the STEMscopes lessons. Students are given opportunities to make the connections between the various models of three-dimensional figures and their attributes as they are exposed to them in the classroom. Classroom discussion and student sharing are both great ways to highlight student work and help them build and understand connections. For those reasons, these activities could demonstrate MTRs 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. Questions are a great way to help dictate the direction of the discussion in the classroom. Here are some great examples of open-ended questions for students from the Math Chat cards within Scope 8. They encourage students to reflect on the attributes that guided them to sort their 3D figures, manipulatives or paper versions, whether there could have been various ways for them to sort their figures, where they may have seen these 3D figures outside of school, for that real-world connection, and what types of figures they could create when composing other figures. The conversations elicited from these questions could demonstrate MTRs 1, 2, 4, and 6. These math chat questions can be found in the Scope 8 Explore. While students are engaging in exploration tasks and having discussions about their learning, we should be hearing specific mathematical vocabulary used by both the teacher and the students. Students should identify the three-dimensional figures by their names and the characteristics or features of those figures as attributes. This list includes many terms within this scope. These terms and their definitions can be found on the Scope 8 parent letter. There should be multiple opportunities for students to show their understanding throughout this unit. From student journal entries to explore exit tickets and show what you know tasks, there are plenty of chances for informal assessment along the way. Students are asked to sort, name attributes, draw figures, and even determine the 3D figures that are formed by the decomposition of another figure. There are also fluency games where students can not only build and show their understanding, but continue to grow within the content, which is especially important in such a vocabulary-rich unit as this. These activities could demonstrate MTRs 2, 3, 6, and 7, and can be found within the STEMscopes Scope Explore and Show What You Know sections. As classrooms are visited throughout the school year, questions are a fantastic way to gauge student understanding. The following questions are a great way to measure a first grader's understanding of three-dimensional figures. Students might explain how they named a particular figure or use specific attributes to explain how they determined its name. They might also provide an explanation as to their understanding of composing and decomposing figures and its meaning to them. Be sure to check out our Math Smarts website for some additional questions to ask students in order to gauge their understanding. Home is a great place for students to continue their learning. This is an example of an activity from the Scope 8 parent letter. Students could use modeling clay and 3D vocabulary in order to create and mold one of the three-dimensional figures. Students could also find a real-world example of the figure that they are modeling to have a concrete example in front of them. As an extension, students could be asked to write about the attributes of the figure, including its number of sides, faces, and vertices. The purpose of this activity is to increase students' hands-on exposure with three-dimensional figures and to increase their understanding of the attributes. Lastly, as students identify these objects within the real world, they make great connections to the content they are learning. The parent letter includes this and many other activities for home, so make sure to check it out. Thanks for joining us today as we discussed best practices for the first grade unit, three-dimensional figures, which in the real world are all around us. From pyramids to cans of soup or soda to traffic cones, our students can identify three-dimensional figures everywhere. We will see you next time for our next best practices video.